All right. Okay, so we are in the early part of chapter 17, Perek Yud Zayin. Just as a brief review, let's take a look at, we'll go straight to the slides. I had to make a nice fancy little presentation. I like playing around with the stuff. Okay, it gives me something to do, keeps me off the streets. Tanya Chapter 17, we're in part 2 now. Now, if you remember from last week, this chapter is focusing on the opening words on the book plate, the Shara Sefer. That was his basic thesis of the entire book. And it said like this: the book is based on the pasuk, Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od, ficha uvilvavcha la'asoto, that it is exceedingly close and attainable for you in your words, in your heart, to do it. And he started off this chapter saying, now we can understand this pasuk. But before he says, no, the question is, okay, before I even tell you how to understand it, wait a second, it makes no sense. What do you mean it's exceedingly easy? Just say it, even if you just say it's simple to keep mitzvot, to do, it's not. And to go on top of it and say me'od, it's exceedingly easy to do, and not easy, but attainable. Not only that, we also noted that the order of the words is not what we normally see. We've been speaking for months and months about machashava, dibur, and maaseh, a person's thought process, their speech, and their action starts up here, comes to here, starts here, goes to here, and comes to here. Meaning it starts in levavacha, which is the heart, meaning I'm pointing to my head, but the thought process, then the ficha, then machshava, that is the dibur, and then the maaseh. So the first two words are flipped. So that's the question he left us with last week, is what exactly does it mean? How in the world can we say it's easy or easily attainable? So we're going to look at it first before we go to the answer. We're going to look at a couple of slides from Rav Steinsaltz to explain a little bit more about what is the question here. He tells us like this at the beginning of the chapter. She'ein karov me'od hadavar. It's not easily attainable. Lehefech, it's the opposite. Libo mitavat olam hazeh la'avat Hashem be'emet. We have human desires. We desire physical things. It's not that we're sitting here all day, unfortunately, thinking about loving Hashem constantly in truth. So he tells us like this. It's not such an insignificant thing to say, not so simple to say. A person's going to be able to easily change their heart and focus solely on the love of Hashem. Adam hashakua b'inyanei ha'olam hazeh, man who is mired in this world, shelibo natun la'asakav, his heart, his mind is on his work, l'ritzonotav, and his needs, v'hanaotav, and his desires or pleasures, shavolam hazeh. Lo karov, it's not easily attainable. El rachok hadavar she'yafoch et libo le'avat Hashem. Says, what are you telling me? How can you try me? It's karov me'od beficha b'vavcha la'asoto. No, it's not. That's the first thing he says. The second thing he says is this. Let me refresh your memory what this is referring to here. And he said, what should we find in the book? Right, I have to find the page. Okay, right. He said that on the one hand, yirah, maybe the idea of being in fear and awe of Hashem, maybe that's somewhat easily achievable. But more difficult to say is the ahavat Hashem. And so Rav Steinsaltz tells us as follows. Ahavat Hashem hi midah shekasha yoter lagieh eleh miyirat Hashem. It's much more difficult to attain a true, constant love of Hashem, more so than it is to attain or achieve yirat Hashem. Yirah hi b'mahuta midah passivit. Think about it. What is yirah? It's a passive thing. It doesn't require any strong action on your part. It's not the same thing. Love is you have to hashkia, you have to put into it, you have to feel. לכן, כפי שרואים במציאות, as we see in the real world, שיהיו הדברים נוגעים בליבו של אדם, ליראה, וכל שכן אהבת השם, אין קרוב הדבר כלל. He says the idea of maybe Yirat Hashem could be more easily achieved, but it's not simple, and for sure not ahava. The gami losif ala koshi sheroim b'mitziut, just to add more problems here. Amru Rabbeinu zichronam livracha, our rabbis taught that tzaddikim dafka libam b'rushutam. It's only the tzaddikim that actually are able to rule over their heart. Aval stam adam en libo b'rushuto. It's not easy. Our hearts, we have a very hard time, and we've talked about this many times. It's very hard for us to rule over our heart and make these conscious decisions constantly to have this connection to Hashem. סתם אדם אינו מגיע מיד כאשר הוא מחליט שראוי להיות קרוב אל השם, שיתהפך גם ליבו בקרבו. I'm going to read and I'll explain. אנו רואים זאת בינינו, מסתבר שגם חז"ל היו סבורים שהדבר הוא בכוחם של צדיקים בלבד. He says, look, tachlis, who really can do this? It's tzadikim. Who's this book for? The Beinonim. And he said this pasuk not only applies to Beinonim, it applies to everybody, because we said last time that it was not given when Moshe Rabbeinu said this pasuk in the Torah. It wasn't just to the generation he's talking to. It's nitzchi. The Torah is nitzchi, and therefore it's permanent. It's eternal, and means it applies to you and me too. So how are we going to reconcile this? Okay, so now we're going to start coming to the answer. This is pretty much until here, what we did last week. We'll move down this a little bit. Oops. I'm going to read the text. We are right now, right after the period where it says Libam Birshutam. There's a period if you have the text, and then only a few lines in. It says Ella, rather. The reason I have this in red and the next couple of things in red is that we're going to look at a slide on those words. But first, we're going to look at a few lines. Okay, so let me read. Ella, but rather, what exactly is the issue here? So he says like this, that La'asoto, the order of the words alone in the pasuk, where it says Beficha ubilvavcha la'asoto, we already can know that the ahava, or the love that is required of us to connect to Hashem, cannot be the ahava we've referred to till now. Listen what he says. When it says to do it, what's the doing it? It is merely the love that you want, that you have, that you want to do a mitzvah. It brings you to do the mitzvah. It's the ritzon halev, it's the desire of the heart. It's hidden in the deep recesses of the heart. Even though it may not be this burning love of God. Okay, this sentence, this pasuk, is critical to understand. Let's make sure it's clear. What is karov elecha? What is it? The ability to say, I love God, and because of that, I want to do a mitzvah. It's not calling on you to have this burning desire. It's not calling on you to have this constant, unbelievable love of Hashem. It's not calling on you to have this constant kavanah when you do a mitzvah, when you do everything. It's not. What is this? What is this, quote, easily attainable thing? The ability to just waken your heart up. You get that from love of God, you want to do a mitzvah. Why else are you doing a mitzvah? If you're only doing it out of rote, you're just doing it, and that's still coming from the ahava misuteret, which we talked about. That's coming from that hidden love, that deep recessed love that's in there. But it's in there, and everyone can access that. That's what's karov elecha. The way we originally read the pasuk about a year and a half ago, and if you were to read the pasuk just in Torah, it sounds like doing mitzvot, avat Hashem, yirat Hashem. Easy peasy, as the kids say. Not so. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just the very basic idea of getting your heart engaged for a moment. I love Hashem. I therefore want to do a mitzvah. It gets you to do the mitzvah. Let's first look at a slide. Let me read one more couple more lines. This is very easily achievable. And it's simple for anybody who's got a brain in their head. Because unlike your heart, your mind is within your control. And all you need to do is focus and think for a little bit. What does that mean? Right now, if I tell you, think about anything, it's the old line, think about anything except a pink elephant. All you're thinking about now is a pink elephant. Very nice, of course. If I tell you, think about what is the square root of 974.629. You're not going to be able to think about that, okay? Because your brain, unless you're a math genius, is not going to be able to start doing that calculation in your head. All you need to do, just like you can say, oh, I want to think about what I'm planning tomorrow. I want to think about what I'm doing in an hour. I want to think about what's on TV right now. You engage your mind, whether you realize it or not, constantly. All you have to do is just engage your mind a little bit. Oh, I have to do a mitzvah. Hashem wants me to do a mitzvah. I love God. I want to do a mitzvah. How easy is that in your brain to think about something like that? And when you think about the grandiosity of God, at least you'll have a basic love of Hashem, to cling to God and to keep his mitzvot and his Torah. Meaning, this idea of la'asoto, what is the la'asoto? What is the doing? Engaging your mind and heart. Just think about, I love God and I want to do his mitzvot. And if that propels you to do the mitzvah, you have done beficha b'lavcha la'asoto. Now let's take a look before we continue with this. Let's look at a slide from Rav Steinsaltz. I'm going back now. Ela esberu she'ahava mura b'pasuk zeh, b'pasuk zeh, idafka ha'ahava de la'asoto. When it says in the pasuk, it refers to the ahava just before, that this pasuk refers to. The kind of love it's talking about is the la'asoto. What does that mean? Which we just mentioned. What does that mean? This applies, connects to the essence of a Benoni. As has been mentioned in earlier chapters. This essence, שינוי פנימי, הרגשת הלב, בין ההוויה למעשה, במעשה ובחוויה שבתחום החיים המעשי. In free translation, you have this ability. You have the ability to make this distinction between your inner life and your exterior and how you're going to act in the ma'asi world, in the physical world. כאשר נאמר שקרוב, נאמר שקרוב אליך, הדבר מאוד בפיך ובאבך לעשותו. When it says that the idea is very achievable in your mouth, in your heart, to do it. And hakavana, it does not mean it'll be the first way. That you're going to somehow create this burning love and burning desire inside and feeling for Hashem. That you're always going to be constantly in love with God. And love sick over God. That's not what the pasuk means. Only a level of love that will cause a person to do action. Your heart, this kind of your heart. Even though this love we're talking about does not in any way, shape, or form get to this magnificent, strong, passionate, desiring love of God, it's still called levavcha. It's still called levavcha, a love that's in your heart. This love may not be real, true love from the perspective of your experience, but it is a form of love in the following way. What does that mean? That it's something that's two Aramaic words. This means son, liba, of course, lev. Shukata leva pnimit, the inner desire, the inner striving of the heart. Every Jew has that. Every single Jew. So just before we continue, let's recap. Think about this again for a moment. What is he telling us? Imagine I told you that in order to succeed at your job, you had to do a fantastic job. What does that mean? So you ask your boss, that's pretty not clear. It's unclear what you're trying to tell. What do you mean I do how do you measure fantastic? It says you got to do a great job. So what does that mean? Well, it means get here on time and do the best you can. Well, that's different than saying fantastic. Fantastic sounds like almost perfection. Hashem's not looking for perfection. Matter of fact, Hashem could never require perfection from us. It's impossible because only Hashem is perfect. What is he requesting? Love. What kind of love? On the surface, it sounds like the lishpe love, this burning love of God. Now we're being told absolutely that's not what's in it. Of course, Hashem wants that eventually. But that's not the first step. The first step is just motivating. He's telling your heart, your brain, look, I love a God. You say it every day, twice a day minimum, maybe 3. And all you need to do is think for a second. And then you engage your heart. And that's why you do mitzvot. You have achieved that pasuk. V'zeh kol ha'adam. We're going to see in the commentary from Rav Steinsaltz where this first one, where does these words come from? At the end of Kohelet, it says, for some reason, this is a pasuk I love. It's always stuck in my head. I've quoted it many times. Sof davar kol nishma et Elokim yira v'et mitzotav shemo ki zeh kol ha'adam. Bottom line, what does Hashem want from us? Is Hashem looking for us to build these magnificent, gigantic shoals, spend all day shuckling and shul? Hashem wants us. He wants a relationship with us. Or is another word saying, Hashem wants our heart. Get our heart somewhat engaged, and then we are able to take it to the next level. This is the whole thing of man. The mitzvot are here to do for today. What is this world? This world we've talked about is the olam ha'ma'aseh. This is the olam ha'asiyah. What is our goal? To do mitzvot. We said na'aseh v'nishma. We say, the Torah says, hayom la'asotam. Hashem gives them today to us to do them. We have to be active. We have to be pa'il. We have to la'asot. And to do that and to conjure up in our minds and heart the push to get that started, piece of cake. We see it's a piece of cake now. But in addition to that, it says, Hayom la'asotam, and Chazal tells you machar to get the reward for it. As it's explained in another place. Let's take a look what he's talking about here. Zekol ha'adam. According to Kohelet, that's the pasuk I just quoted. Starting here. B'sofo shel davar, ahava zo, this love, hameviyah lekiyum hamitzvot, that brings the person to do mitzvot, hi hanidreshet me'adam b'asher adam. Hashem cannot require of us more than we can give. He's not asking us to stand on our heads and to put tefillin on while we're spinning cartwheels. Hashem's not asking us to keep Shabbat perfectly. He's asking to do the best we can. All we are human. We are human beings. The fact that a person does action, and he's doing it out of a desire, and his desire comes from his even short, brief introspection. That's the whole person. That's what Hashem is looking for. There are some very, very, very tiny sliver of Jews that they have specific requirements. The angels, I don't mean the real angels, but people who are almost like a malach, they can do other things. They can do much higher level of kol adam. The average person, the rest of us, mortals, but God is not requiring us to do this with a burning heart. But at least to do what we're doing out of a desire to serve Hashem. He's not looking for us to do this as drones. He's not looking for us to do everything by rote. He's not looking for us to do everything without even thinking at all. You have to show some form of ratzon. And where does that ratzon come from? The love of Hashem. Again, that's kavod la'asot tov. Oh, I did this one. Put it on twice. That's interesting. Okay, then it says למחר לקבל שכרם, כמו שבמערב במקום אחר. העולם הזה הוא כאמור עולם העשייה בלבד. This world is the world of action. שבו אין אדם מגיע להתייחסות שלמה של כל חלקי נפשו. You are not, sorry to disappoint you, you are not going to achieve a completion or a totality of all the parts of your neshama. Meaning you will not be able to completely 100% all the time be able to get your mind and your emotions completely engaged with every action you're doing. Just tomorrow. What does that mean? When will that happen? When you're total. What does that mean? At that point is when you're going to be shlam. Now, why is the Hashem make us like that? It sounds like we're like, sugbet, sounds like that. Not at all. Why? If we actually could truly feel the shlemut, the totality, and the goodness and the holiness, so just if you feel about even just one mitzvah, you understood and connected 1,000% inside, outside. All he would do all day long is only mitzvot and absolutely nothing else. You'd be so overwhelmed and so overcome by that powerful set of emotions, physical, spiritual, emotional, you'd be nothing else. The joy that one has in just one mitzvah. It's more than anything this world can give. Now, you might think that reading a good book and watching a good movie, taking a nice long walk, going on a vacation, they bring you tremendous oneg, and they do bring you tremendous oneg and joy. But doing a mitzvah, which may not always seem on the surface that it's accomplishing the same thing, understand that brings a tremendous oneg to your neshama beyond anything you could ever imagine. Because this world, in its essence, is not meant to be a place for us to receive reward. This world where best for us is that we have a close relationship with Hashem. Maybe one person in 1,000, I think it's less. Even says even less than that can actually feel this all the time. When do we really feel a true sense of this goodness of God and closeness? Tomorrow. Only tomorrow, after 120 years, will we really feel that tremendous connection and love. Okay, next here. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read a few lines and then one slide on this red, and then we're going to stop because then I get into a longer piece that it's going to drag out, and I don't want to do that. Okay, then he tells us like this. Let me just get it from my book and look at my here. Now he tells us another point. The hamoach, our brains, shalit al halev b'tivo, they rule over our hearts naturally. V'tolato al chalal smali shebalev, and also over the left side of our heart. Remember, we're speaking metaphorically in a spiritual sense. The brain also rules over what was the left side of the heart, right? The Yetzer Hara, which was the Sitra Achra. Val piv, val kol avarim, shem klei, and it rules over the mouth, and it rules over all of our limbs that work. Ilo mishu rasha be'emet, unless a person is a true rasha, as Chazal tell us, as opposed to the Rishaim, whose heart rules every action they take. And their heart is not in their control whatsoever, meaning everything is done on instinct. They just, their brain, their heart says, I want to steal that. I want to be with this woman. I want to, whatever it might be, they just follow their way. וזה עונש גדול, וזה עונש על גודל ועוצם עוונם. And this, the fact that their heart just rules them completely, remember the left side of the heart, the sitra achra, the yitzhar, that is itself a form of punishment on the magnitude of their avera. Let's take a look at this slide. Okay, let's see what he means by this. Let me get another picture. Okay. כאשר כאדם מגיע למעגל כזה של חטא, אין דרך יציאתו ממנו. When a person gets to a point where they're stuck in a rut, and they're doing averot, they're doing sin, and they can't get out of it. של עבירה גוררת עבירה, that one sin brings another. של תאווה המביאה לתאווה, one desire brings another desire. זה אינו עוד חלק מהעבירה, אלא חלק מהעונש. Listen to this. It's not that the guy continues to do avirot, but the fact that he continues to do avirot because one sin brings another is itself, says the Alter Rebbe, a form of the punishment this person. He can't get out of the rut. We're talking though about a Rasha Gamur. If you remember, we talked about all the different levels. This is the Rasha Gamur, real total Rasha. When a person reaches this lousy level, he sees clearly. He sees clearly how he's killing himself in this world and in the next. That he can't save himself from this trap. This is itself the punishment of the person who cannot stop sinning. He went in the ways, desires of his heart for the bad things. He allowed an animal to grow, and to develop in himself. And therefore, Hashem punishes him in a certain way, in a certain sense, removes from him. In a sense, he removes his bechira chofshit. He gave up on his own, for his own free choice at some point. And he no longer makes choices. It's on autopilot to do these things. God just lets him keep going in the next stage. In the same way. So he's saying that the idea that a person is in this terrible cycle of doing more and more and more. It gets to a certain point where, for sure, his heart is not ruling him. He's ruling him. He's doing whatever his heart desires. He's lost his bechira chofshit at some point. This helps us to understand a philosophical question that comes up in the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. The famous question is, how is it that Paro gets punished when it says Hashem hardened Paro's heart? If Hashem hardened Paro's heart and didn't let the Jews go, it's God's problem. It's not Paro's problem, so to speak, in quotes. So many, many years ago, probably 13 years ago, on the night of Pesach, Rav Aviner spoke about this question, and he gave two answers. And this one, I'm only going to give the one because it fits in here. If Hashem did not harden Paro's heart, he would have, in a sense, taken away Paro's bechira chofshit. What does that mean? He was on autopilot. He was a Russia. His heart wanted nothing better than to destroy the Jews. His heart wanted nothing better to make their lives miserable, etc., etc., etc. He didn't have a choice anymore. He was like an addict who no longer was choosing to take the drug. His body needed the drug. By hardening his heart, Hashem once again gives him his free will. How? Now he could say, we just said we're talking about the heart and how the heart rules the Rasha. By hardening it, he's no longer his heart ruling, and now his brain is able to think. Now he can say, shall I let these Jews go, or should I keep them here and make their lives more miserable? And I think it was the Vilna Gaon that said this. It's been a long time since I heard it, but I can't remember for sure. But I think it was him. I'll have to ask Rabbi there. So that helps us to understand this as well. So what do we do? Number one, we start off by saying, how in the world can you say it's simple, or it's karov elecha davar b'fichotavcha lasoto? We're going to arvit in 2 minutes. And how do we say? So now we gave the answer. The lasoto is a very easily achievable thing, with the exception of Rishayim. They're not going to be able to do that because their heart no longer is not even there. They can't rule over it. Okay, so have a wonderful evening, everybody. Good to see you. And Bezrat Hashem, we shall continue next week, but at the regular time, hopefully it's 7 o'clock.